Hello, my name is Nashish, and today I'm going to talk about Christian philosophy by Saint Augustine. Augustine was a Christian philosopher who lived in 4th century and 5th century AD on the fringes of rapidly declining Roman Empire. In the North African town of Hippo, he served as bishop for 35 years. Being popular and inspirational to his largely uneducated and poor congregation, in his last days, a Germanic tribe known as the Vandals burnt Hippo to the ground, destroyed the legions made with the town's young women, but made off with the young woman, but left Augustine's cathedral out of respect for the elderly philosopher. His library was also untouched and left as it is because of the respect for the elderly philosopher's achievements so far in his life. He criticized about Rome, about its values and about its outlook, and because Rome has so many things common with the modern West, especially the United States. It believed in two things in particular. One, earthly happiness. They were on whole an optimistic lot. The builders of the Ponjuga technology in the power of humans mastered themselves in the ability to control nature and plot on their own for their own happiness and satisfaction. Writers like Cicero and Plutarch had a degree of pride, ambition, and confidence in the which, with some revision, wouldn't be out of place in the modern day Palo Alto or weird in the revision. The Romans were keen practitioners of what we call now as self-help, training their audiences to greatest success and effectiveness in their eyes. The human animal was something eminently open to adjust social order for long periods. Point 2 is a just social order. The Romans had a view that their society was marked with justice, justitia. People with ambition and knowledge could make it to the top. The army was trusted to be meritocratic. The capacity to make money was held a practical ability, and also a degree of the ability to make money was an practical ability and also a degree of inner virtue. Therefore, showing off one's wealth was deemed honorable and therefore a point of pride, and fame was considered wholly respectable ideal. Augustine disagreed furiously with both of these virtues. Augustine disagreed furiously with both of these assumptions. In his masterpiece, The City of God, is dissected each of these 2 points, that human life could be affected and societies were just, in ways that continue to prove relevant to us today. It was Augustine who came up with the idea of original sin. He proposed that all humans, not merely this or that unfortunate events, example were crooked because all of us with are unwittingly heirs to the sins of Adam. Our sinful nature gives us to what Augustine called a libido dominando, a desire to dominate, which is evident in a brutal, blinkered, merciless way we treat others in the world around us. We cannot properly love, for we are constantly undermined by our egoismal pride. Our powers of reasoning and understanding are fragile in the extreme lust haunts our days and nights. We fail to understand ourselves. We chase phantoms with anxieties. Augustine concluded his assault by chiding all those philosophers who, in his words, have wished with amazing folly to be happy here on earth and achieve bliss by their own efforts. It might sound depressing, but it may turn out to be curious relief to be told that our lives are already not by confidence, but by definition simply coincidence, but by definition, simply because we are human and can have ever be made entirely straight. We are creatures fated to our infused virtue, in love, while never quite being able to secure them for ourselves. Relationship, careers, and countries are mercilessly not as we would want to be. Augustine's primarily work on the topics of Manichaeism and Neoplatonism. His early life consisted of Manichaeism. Augustine initially was a professor of rhetoric. His conversion began when he converted into faith and religion when a countryman named Pontianus visited him and told him about monastic life and wonderful conquest over self which had never heard by him. Augustine's pride was touched that the unlearned should take the kingdom of heaven by violence, while he, with all his learning, was still held captive by the flesh and seemed unworthy of him. He had made up his mind to get baptized. He contacted Ambrose, a bishop. He also informed about it to his mother, and he left his position and job. And that's how Christianity and philosophy were both intertwined, and this was possible because of Augustine's leap of faith over his previous life to the religious life that he was about to be going to living.
Hello, myself Ashish, and today we will discuss about Christian philosophy of Aquinas. So, Saint Thomas Aquinas was born in 1225 at the family castle in Roccasecca, and he died after 49 years on March 7, 1274 in Fossanova, which is 20 kilometers far from his birthplace. He is also known as father of natural law theory. He was also the one of 33 doctors of Catholic Church. He was a philosopher and the theologian. His one of the greatest work is Summa Theologiae. Now currently his techniques are used in ethics, civil laws, religion, morality, and politics. He was also bachelor and master in theology. Thomas Aquinas believed that for the knowledge of any truth whatsoever man needs divine help, that the intellect may be moved by God to its acts. Now let's see what was the contribution of Aquinas in Christian philosophy. Saint Thomas Aquinas was the greatest of the scholastic philosophers. He produced a comprehensive synthesis of Christian theology and Aristotelian philosophy that influenced Roman Catholic doctrine for centuries and was adopted as the official philosophy of the Church in 1917. Aquinas criticized the thesis that philosophy is distinct from theology, as well as the notion of a physical nature that has determined laws. He was especially critical of the theory that the soul is bound up with the body as the two necessary principles that make up the nature of man, and also reacted strongly to the Aristotelian denial of the Platonic Augustine theory of knowledge based upon exemplary ideas or forms, and thus the disagreement was performed. Certainly all Christian philosophers taught the distinction between matter and spirit. The distinction, however, could be intelligently held only if the internal relationship between matter and spirit in individual human being is sought. Thomas Aquinas was canonized a saint in 1323, officially named Doctor of the Church in 1567, and proclaimed the protagonist of orthodoxy during the modernist crisis at the end of the 19th century. This continuous commendation, however, cannot obligate the historical difficulties in which he was embroiled in the 13th century during the radical theology renewal, a renewal that was contested at the time and yet was brought about by the social, cultural, and religious evolution of the West. Thomas Aquinas was the heart of the doctrinal crisis of confronted Christendom when the discovery of Greek sciences, culture, and thought seemed about to crush it. William of Tocco, Aquinas' first biographer, who had known him and was able to give evidence of the impression produced by his master's teaching. He says that Brother Thomas raised new problems in his teachings, invented a new method, used new system of proof. To hear him teach a new doctrine with new arguments, one could not doubt that God, by the irradiation of the new light and by the novelty of this impression, gave him the power to teach. By the spoken and written words, new opinions and new knowledge. In Christian thought, the highest form of love signifies the reciprocal love between God and man. This is made magnificent in unselfish love of one's fellow men. St. Paul classified this description of charity is found in New Testament. In Christian theology and ethics, charity is most eloquently shown in the life, teachings, and death of Jesus Christ. Saint Augustine summarized much of Christian thoughts about charity when he wrote, "Charity is virtue which, when our affections are perfectly ordered, unites us to God, for by it we love Him." Using these definitions and other forms of Christian tradition, the medieval theologies, especially Saint Thomas Aquinas, placed charity in the context of other Christian virtues, and especially he played a major role as the formation of root of them all. The Catholic Church also honors Thomas Aquinas as a saint and regards him as the model teacher for those studying for the priesthood, and indeed the highest expression of both natural reason and speculative theology. Thomas Aquinas is considered one of the Catholic Church's greatest theologians and philosopher.
Myself Geetana, I'll explain you further about Thomas Aquinas. Saint Thomas Aquinas believed that the existence of God could be proven in 5 ways. That is, by observing movement in the world as proof of God, the immovable mover, observing cause and effect and identifying God as the cause of everything, concluding that the impermanent nature of beings proves the existence of a necessary being, God, who originates only from within himself. By noticing varying level of human perfection and determining that a supreme, perfect being must therefore exist, and knowing that natural beings could not have intelligence without it being granted to them, it is by God. Subsequent to defending people's ability to naturally perceive proof of God, Thomas also tackled the challenges of protecting God's image as an all-powerful being. He also uniquely addressed appropriate social behavior towards God, In so doing, he gave his ideas as contemporary, some would say timeless, everyday context. He believed that the law of state were in fact a natural product of human nature and were crucial to social welfare. Saint Thomas Aquinas identified three types of laws: natural, positive, and eternal. According to him, natural law promotes man to act in accordance with achieving his goal and governs man's sense of right and wrong. The positive law is the law of state or government and should always be manifested of natural law. And eternal law, in the case of rational beings, depends on reason and is put into action through free will, which also works towards the accomplishment of man's spiritual goals. Combining traditional principles of theology with modern philosophic thought, Saint Thomas Aquinas' treatises touch upon the question and struggles of medieval intellectuals, church authorities, and everyday people alike. Perhaps this is precisely what marked them as unrivaled in their philosophical influence at that time, and explains why they could continue to serve as a building block for contemporary thought, garnering responses from theologians, philosophers, critics, and believers thereafter. In the Summa Theologica, Thomas begins his discussion of Jesus Christ by recounting the biblical story of Adam and Eve and by describing the negative effect of original sin. The purpose of Christ's incarnation was to restore human nature by removing the contamination of sin, which humans cannot do by themselves. Divine wisdom judged it fitted that God should become man, so that thus one and the same person could be able both to restore man and offer satisfaction. Thomas argued in favor of the satisfaction view of atonement, that is, that Jesus Christ died to satisfy for the whole human race, which was sentenced to die on account of sin. Thomas argued against several specific contemporary and historical theologians who held differing views about Christ. In response to Fortinus, Thomas stated that Jesus was truly divine and not simply a human being. Against Nestorius, who suggested that Son of God was merely conjoined to the man Christ, Thomas argued that the fullness of the God was an integral part of Christ's existence. However, countering Apollinaris' views, Thomas held that Christ had a truly human soul. As well, this produced a duality of natures in Christ. He argued against Eutyches that his duality persisted after the incarnation. Thomas stated that these two natures existed simultaneously yet distinguishedly in one real human body, unlike the teachings of Manichaeus and Valentinus. Thank you.